So folks, here's what I'm offering. The Quran is a text that came with a challenge to produce something like it. The Arab pagans of the time, instead of coming with something like it, instead of challenging the Quran, what they did was they actually converted to Islam. They changed their religion. They stopped believing in the gods.
No.
Wait a minute. So Al-Nadir, guy that we read about in Muslim sources, Muhammad would come up with his revelation. He'd say, I've got a revelation. And Al-Nadir would get up behind him and then say, I could do better than that. And he would recite his own poetry. And then he would challenge the Muslims. Tell me any way that Muhammad's is better than mine. Give me an example. That was during Muhammad's time. How did Muslims respond? They killed him. They killed him. As soon as they got the chance, they killed him.
How many times do I need to refute this ridiculous point?
You asked me excellent question.
So 7 months ago, on June the 12th, 2023, this happened.
Who are examining this evidence. So
The unbiased ones.
the reason I'm bringing this up is that this actually happened. What Fareed is saying could have happened, and I'm sure Fareed knows this. He knows Ibn Ishaq. There was a guy named Al-Nadir who, when Muhammad would get up to deliver his revelations of the Quran, Al-Nadir would stand up after him and also recite verses and then challenge people and say, in what way is Muhammad?
Yeah, you got that? In Nadir, he used to recite verses in the same way the Quran had verses recited, yeah? You guys get that? When Abu Jahl said that to them, Al-Nadhr bin Harith bin Kalada bin Alqama bin Abd Manaf bin Abd ad-Dar bin Qusay got up and said, "Oh Quraysh, a situation has arisen which you cannot deal with. Muhammad was a young man, most like among you, most truthful in speech and most trustworthy, until when you saw gray hairs on his temple and he brought you his message. You said he was a sorcerer, but he is not. For we have seen such people, and they're spitting off their knots. And you said a diviner, but we have seen such people and their behavior, and we have heard their rhymes. And you said a poet, but he is not a poet, for we have heard all kinds of poetry. And you said he was possessed, but he is not. For we have seen the possessed, and he shows no signs of their gasping and whispering and delirium. Ye men of Quraysh, look to your affairs, for by God a serious thing has befallen you." Wow. Is this the guy, David, that's challenging the Quran, that met the challenge of the Quran, that recited verses like the Quran? It seems like it doesn't seem like he's got all that. Let's carry on. Now, An-Nadhr bin Harith was one of the Satans of Quraysh. He used to insult the apostle and show him enmity. He had been to Al-Hira and learned there the tales of the kings of Persia and the tales of Rustum and Isbandiyar. When the apostle had held a meeting in which he reminded them of God and warned his people of what had happened to bygone generations as a result of God's vengeance, An-Nadhr got up, and when he sat down and said, "I can tell a better story than he, come to me." Then he began to tell them about the kings of Persia, Rustum and Isbandiyar. And then he said, "In what respect is Muhammad a better storyteller than I?" Aywa? Anything about reciting verses? Anything about challenging the Quran? Nothing. Nothing, a punk.
This is so beautiful.
Oh, and this isn't the first time I've responded to this. I've actually dealt with it on May the 16th, 2020, around 3.5 years ago.
Second, this has been going on for 14 centuries. When Muhammad was delivering his revelations in Mecca, a man named Al-Nadir ibn al-Harith would follow him around. Muhammad would recite his latest verses, and Al-Nadir would stand up and recite some verses of his own, and then ask the listeners, in what way are Muhammad's verses better than mine?
Okay, so first of all, that's not even true.
if you go back to Sirat ibn Hisham, you'll find that Nadr ibn Harith did not recite verses. He did not attempt to come up with his own Quran or anything like that. He did not attempt the Quranic challenge. All that he did was he mentioned the tales of the Persians, the legends of the Persians, and he would say, in what way are the stories of Muhammad better than mine? That's what he did. He did not attempt the Quran's challenge. So you should get your facts straight, David.
Some of the Quran verses where unbelievers keep making fun of Muhammad's revelations, saying these are nothing but tales of the ancients, were a response to Al-Nadr. Al-Nadr was captured after the Battle of Badr. Most of the prisoners were held for ransom, but not Al-Nadr. He was killed. 14 centuries later,
he was killed because he's the friggin' flag bearer, dude. Okay.
So is David Wood getting worse, guys? In 2020, he at least was clear about Nadr bin Harith being killed after going to war with Muslims. In his latest video, in which he brings up Nadr bin Harith, he makes no mention of war. If you're listening to this for the first time, you'd assume that he was assassinated for attempting the challenge of the Quran.
Give me an example. That was during Muhammad's time. How did Muslims respond? They killed him. They killed him. As soon as they got the chance, they killed him.
Shame on you, David, if you're doing this intentionally. Now, before ending this video, I'd just like to say something that I've mentioned in previous videos. I believe that the Muslim-Christian polemic scene is quite stagnant because of folks like David Wood that haven't developed themselves since the early 2000s. David, you can develop yourself by watching my videos and learning not to make the same dumb arguments again and again after they've been refuted time and time again. If you ever feel frustrated by the childishness of your audience in the comment section, then you only have yourself to blame. You can't expect them to grow if you don't grow yourself. And to the rest of you guys, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
But don't you know about the prophet who came to America and who delivered his message? His name was Allah something, the guy from Nation of Islam.
Let's see.